What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about the worst ice storm in Canadian history in 1998. I have to admit, in 1998, I was just a wee, small child. I have never heard of this storm. I was not aware of this storm. But for a lot of people, 1998? That wasn't that long ago. That was only like 25 years ago. It's not like this happened 250 years ago or anything. This is fairly recent. So for me to have not had any concept of this happening, I feel like is kind of a big deal, but I'm ready to rectify that today. I was looking it up on Wikipedia, and I mean, when an ice storm has its own Wikipedia entry, you know it's kind of a big deal, right? I mean, they made this whole documentary about it, for one thing. Let's not skip over that. This is 40 minutes long. So this is not going to be one part. This video is probably going to have to be split up into 2 or 3 parts, to be honest, but I want to watch it. This sounds fascinating and also horrible at the same time. But here we are in 2023, not 2, 3, and it's time for me to learn about this. January 1998 North American ice storm, also known as the Great Ice Storm of 1998, or the January ice storm. Massive combination of 5 successive ice storms struck a relatively narrow swath of land from eastern Ontario to southern Quebec, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia in Canada. Goodness gracious. I can't possibly imagine what the people who endured this went through, and I don't have to, because I'm about to watch an entire video all about it. So, with that being said, let's take a look.
Montreal, Canada. Its 3.5 million inhabitants are used to extremely severe winters. They have no choice, as bitterly cold temperatures and heavy snowfalls of as much as 15 inches at a time vary the city.
They have no... Yeah, I don't know what... He makes it sound like a prison or something. They have no choice. All right, I know this is not supposed to be funny, but what can you do? I guess you gotta find a little humor in the horrors of the world, or what are you gonna do?
This city knows bad weather. There is one kind of winter storm that is the toughest to beat: the ice storm.
Yeah.
So Montreal has got its first forecast of freezing rain. This is all ice.
Oh my gosh. I mean, look at this guy. Look at this guy
That is
trying
the
to...
toughest to...
Freezing rain.
Hold on, where is he?
The ice storm.
This? Oh my god. Just running in place.
So Montreal has got
Oh my gosh. So it was all like that, basically.
absolutely surreal. Look at this. Holy crap. Wow. Everything just gets covered in like centimeter thick layer of ice. I went way further than I expected.
I mean, it's all covered. And good, like, say so long to running down the road, unless you're, like, super graceful. Maybe Canadians are actually pretty adept at this, the whole sliding thing.
Whoa. That is too
not.
satisfying. I'm never gonna get sick of that.
Ice storms are created by atmospheric circumstances that are so unique they seem impossible. Unlike New York, just 300 miles to the south, Montreal gets hit by freezing rain an average of 10 days per year.
That is so wild how, like, parts of, North America can be not that far apart, and yet this part of Canada was absolutely hammered by this ice storm, and plenty of other areas in North America were not. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I wonder what perfect set of circumstances, like in nature, with like the weather or whatever, caused this storm to be so horrible.
The reasons are location and geography. When warm air from the south meets cold northern air, this creates the ideal conditions above Montreal for extreme winter weather. And because Montreal lies in the midst of the St. Lawrence River Valley, the situation is intensified.
Oh,
As
that's important. Okay. It also has to do with being in a valley.
warm air from the south rides up over the surrounding mountains, it traps the cold polar air in the valley below. As the warm air rises, it releases rain, which falls through the cold layer.
What?
The perfect amount of cold air then supercools the rain, causing it to be cold enough to freeze the moment it hits the ground.
What? This is like science-y. This is good. I didn't know it worked like this. That is fascinating. The warmer rain is above the colder area, and the rain comes down and passes through the cold area, becomes freezing. Not so fun and interesting for the citizens of Montreal, but the science checks out, I guess.
The longer these conditions remain, the more severe the weather becomes. So if the perfect ice storm were to strike, it would begin on a January day in the skies above Montreal.
It's just surreal, like the entire city just coated with ice.
What?
This is honestly so much fun.
Ice storms are not unusual in Canada, coating the landscape with a beautiful shroud of ice.
I've literally never seen a bush like coated, like someone took a paintbrush out and coated it in a layer of ice like that.
Ice formation generally ranges from a trace to 1 inch.
What? looks like the Chronicles of Narnia. Looks like you got transported to the Winterland. Like it doesn't look right. Doesn't look real.
In accumulation.
But in January 1998, Canada was hit by a storm that was anything but usual.
In 1998, Montreal suffered the most disastrous, tragic, and expensive ice storm in recorded history.
That's all you gotta see right there. These signs coated in ice? Like, what is that? What is going on?
Even for people who grew up in Canada in the eastern part of the country, where winter they take pretty much for granted, have never seen anything quite like this.
Okay.
The damage here is staggering.
Montreal seems like a city truly under siege tonight as thousands of troops move in on a mission of mercy. In Quebec alone, more than 1 million households, that's up to about 3 million people, left without electricity.
Left without yeah, no electricity. I mean, Americans don't associate like like freezing power lines and falling trees and like all this madness that extreme cold can cause, like actually cause trees to fall. And like that power line had broken and was like putting sparks everywhere, and all sorts of crazy stuff can happen when you get like the extreme of cold.
I've never seen anything like this in my life. I never would imagine that something like this could happen.
Wow, yeah, that was another thing. It's like a lot of Canadians are used to like a good old winter. No big deal. So for a lot of people to be like, hey, this is by far the worst like ice storm we've ever experienced in our lifetime, that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot.
I'm freaking out.
The 98 ice storm was Canada's worst natural disaster, affecting over 5.4 million people, or 1/5 of the country's population.
Virtually
No, everyone's just sliding away.
4 million people, or 1/5 of the country's population.
No, see ya. Oh no, I shouldn't make a joke out of this. They're actually trying to help somebody there. It looks like they're trying to carry someone away, maybe in an ambulance, or I don't know what that is. That's just what it looks like. And they're sliding away. Like, it's horrible. It's horrific. Wow. Okay.
Virtually no one east of Ottawa has power tonight.
The storm blanketed an area larger than the state of Florida, 120 miles by 600 miles.
Wow.
This is the largest storm event in NYSEG's history. We suffered damage to our electric lines to the tune of about 1,850 miles. One of our engineers equated to a trip from here to Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh my gosh. Everything is broken, man. Oh, how are you going to get power back when every power line is like damaged? You know, this is back, you know, there's no cell, everyone doesn't have like a cell phone, an iPhone. It's not like you're going to call for help that easily if you need help, if you're out in like driving around and stuff, or if you're caught outside. It's different in that sense too. Everything was like a lot more dangerous communications wise.
New Mexico.
Over 5 days, multiple layers of ice built up because of the relentless freezing rain that weighed down everything it touched.
During the ice storm in a 5-day period, we had 80 hours of freezing rain that produced 100 millimeters of ice.
How did they get all this great footage, by the way? So everyone's running around in chaos, or should I say sliding around in chaos, trapped in their homes with no electricity. Someone had the presence of mind to grab their camera. And, you know, they know what's important. They knew that in... they knew in 20 years, 25 years, that some guy on the internet would be watching it. Some American would be watching it. So thank you, whoever you were that ran outside and filmed all this stuff. Yeah, the ice is actually weighing down everything. That's why a lot of stuff is breaking too. Jeez.
That's a lot of ice all at one time.
Eventually, the city's infrastructure began to collapse.
Oh.
When you saw electrical pylon suddenly buckle in front of your eyes, you knew right away this was going to be major, major problems.
It's a total write-off. I mean, we're not talking a repair job. It's a total rebuild.
Not a repair job, a total rebuild. I never really appreciated that the cold would physically cause things to collapse. I've heard of trees like everything contracts, so things can explode sometimes, even trees. But the weight of the ice actually causing structures to collapse. This is not something that, this isn't like a power outage that gets solved like in a few hours. Everyone's a little annoyed. This is like horrible, terrible, long-lasting damage. Very difficult to fix.
4 million people lost power.
Oh my God.
4 million people lost power.
Repair job. It's a total rebuild.
4 million people lost power.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
A devastating scene across the Champlain Valley and beyond. Thick ice, more than 3 inches in some spots, coating everything.
Over 7.
I can't even believe there's people out driving around. But I mean, it's like you got to. It's at the point where I think people must have been stuck for days. And who knows how long the power wasn't available. You got to go out, you got to get food and stuff. You got to survive.
Coating everything.
Over 17 million acres of forest were damaged in northern New England and upstate New York. Some trees carried 40 times their weight in ice.
And across the border, they were devastated. Montreal got hit hard.
Montrealers were burning the wood off their front porches and fireplaces in some cases that hadn't been used for 50 years.
And we saw an incredible sight, these huge power lines that people see driving from the border north to Montreal. Just absolutely
bent right over.
Amazing sight.
And Quebec stayed that way for quite a while.
After the storm, 3,000 kilometers of power lines were destroyed at a cost of over $800 million.
The economic...
Ridiculous. How long did it take to recover from this event? I can see why this is called like the worst. This video calls it the worst natural disaster in Canadian history.
Power lines were destroyed at a cost of over $800 million.
The economic impact of the storm has been devastating. Insurance companies now estimate they'll pay homeowners $500 million to repair their property, making this the most expensive natural disaster in Canadian history.
Yeah. The week Montreal went dark. Sounds scary. Sounds like this could be a movie or something. I mean, this thing is like 40 minutes long. Yeah, it's the sound of trees falling, right? Icy trees. Wild. This is just strange to me too. I was thinking of like buildings, cities, chaos, things being destroyed. Also, tons of forests, like just trees and forests falling down. Never thought about that.
Snapping branches and power lines, something that few will ever forget.
We could hear the trees crashing, and it sounded like thunder. Some sounded like gunshots. We could hear them just crunching and crashing and going down. My wife and I just sat there. We didn't know what to do.
Oh, but I mean, how did they find like the most Canadian, as an American watching this? He has a maple leaf on his hat. He's a maple producer. Okay, wow, that's actually pretty cool. But this probably totally like screwed him over, like his business. Because this destroyed a bunch of his maple trees, right? Wow, that's horrible. It's actually horrible.
in Pakenham, west of Ottawa. Listen, and you'll hear a forest dying.
I imagine a lot of these trees, you know, fell onto people's homes all over the place as well.
Like gunfire, the sound of maples falling. This is really tough to see.
Oh, it's awful.
Shirley Fulton's family has been running this sugar bush for 150 years. You shouldn't be able to see the sky here. It'll take 40 or 50 years for the bush to recover.
Exactly. Holy. That is ridiculous. That is horrible.
Meteorologists have called the storm a 100-year event, but what many people don't realize is that it may take that long for our forests to recover.
Mother Nature.
Oh man, it's been like 25 years. Could take 100 years to grow back all the trees that fell down. This is a once in 100-year event. Wow.
Nature doesn't really make rational choices. It can hit anywhere and affect anyone and kill people, injure people, ruin livelihoods without the blink of an eye. You really.
Oh, I'm sure there were some people who might have gotten through this like it was a horrible week. What was the name of this section? Like 5 days of darkness, or whatever this part was called. But for others, their whole livelihood, their whole life could have been ruined by this.
Appreciate the power of nature and the power of weather. And ultimately, no matter how much technology we have, no matter how equipped we are, no matter how prepared we are, people will always be profoundly affected by weather.
Yeah.
Days out from a storm, it's hard to predict exactly what'll happen. But in early January 1998, we saw dangerous conditions headed our way.
This is rain. This is rain that means business.
And we knew it was going to be bad.
You're going to have a major icing problem.
The way it visited.
Yeah, I wonder how bad they knew it was going to be. Did they know how bad it was going to be when it was on the Weather Channel?
Itself upon us. It creeped in. It was a couple of days of just that little
January 4th,
little bit of
1998.
rain, little bit, almost mist.
Yeah.
It was just this slow, silent build up until we realized that we were in deep trouble.
Oh, wow. What? Wow, that is kind of terrifying. It wasn't like this huge blizzard and then it was done. You know? That almost would have been merciful. Just there and gone. It was like slow, constant buildup of all this ice. That's how you get like buildup like this crazy amount of ice.
Build up until we realized that we were in deep trouble.
It was Monday, January 5th, 1998. Quebecers going back to school and work after the holidays. It wasn't a very nice day.
Too much ice. The ice is terrible. All over the place.
Dave Bronstetter, this is Daybreak on CBC Radio 1940 in Montreal. If you do not have to go out, do not. Unless it is absolutely necessary, stay home.
Dude, how's he doing that? Oh my god, give this guy a medal. This should be an Olympic event. How'd he do this?
Do not. Unless it is absolutely necessary, stay home.
How's he so good at that?
Highways become skating rinks, and back roads, bobsled runs.
This is what you see in America, usually. This is what, people are so bad at driving in snowy conditions or icy conditions in America because we get so little practice, depending on where you live, maybe no practice. So you see these massive pile-ups, cars skidding out of control, very, very common.
Almost 15,000 trees in Montreal are broken or down. Dozens of streets are closed. Power lines ripped to the ground. Homes and cars damaged.
As I walked up, I said, oh, lucky me, the back windshield has no ice on it. And I got a little closer to find out that I didn't have a back windshield. I don't have much of a front windshield.
His car is, oh my gosh. Everybody's car has a tree on top of it.
Much of a front windshield.
The city tries to clean up the mess. Mother Nature keeps making the mess bigger.
The worst neighborhood are definitely NDG, Maisonneuve, and Rosemont.
I didn't realize it was like this. Yeah, it's like, even once it was stopped raining, stopped snowing, things were just continuing to fall down and break because of the ice. That's like scary, man.
Are definitely NDG, Maisonneuve, and Rosemont.
Late that afternoon, the city opens 2 shelters for people who have no power and need help.
Yeah.
Then, the real power of the storm hits during the afternoon.
So much ice fell that 8 high-voltage power lines crumbled like toothpicks, their cables strewn across a busy highway near Drummondville. Hydro workers have never seen it so bad.
They're just like touching it, like, what? We're not going to fix this with like our wrench today.
About 400,000 homes are without electricity.
Yeah, so, I mean, there must have been some kind of emergency relief effort, right? By Canada? Like, the rest of Canada is seeing this happen, and everyone's like, oh my god, right? Like, I assume something like that happened. And, seems like the community already that's directly affected is trying to get out and, like, help people, open shelters, clear everything. Goodness.
More than 600 crews are working to restore power. Here's a look at the area affected by the storm. A region that stretches from in and around Ottawa to Montreal and up the south shore of the St. Lawrence.
Yeah. We haven't seen anything remotely like this since about February of 1961. We got about 50 millimeters worth of ice. Today, we're getting there. We have about 18 millimeters on the ground, on the cars, on the trees.
Darren Sullivan, our reporter, is outside right now to fill us in with some more information. Darren, what's the latest Hydro says about how many customers are without power?
In all of Quebec, 755,000 homes without electricity. In Montreal, on the island, we're talking about nearly 250,000 homes.
Does Hydro have any new estimate about when people will be getting their power back?
They still say it could take about 3 or 4 days.
That would be amazing. 3 or 4 days to get the power back. Probably seemed like an eternity, but that's amazing from the damage I've seen done.
The forecast for that night and for the next day, Tuesday, January 6th, was for freezing rain. But that forecast didn't say 4 days of freezing rain.
Yeah.
It didn't say the ice storm of the century that's going to turn your lives upside down.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like everyone had no clue what was about to happen. And it's like you said, it like snuck up. It's like the silent killer, this ice buildup.
But that's what we got. This is a look back when the triangle of darkness descended on the South Shore and when the ring of power around Montreal broke down. This is day 2 of the ice storm crisis in Montreal. The freezing rain has started again. There are still 500,000 homes in the southern part of Quebec that do not have electricity.
Command Central at Hydro-Quebec. Workers have been dispatching crews around the clock, trying to deal with one of the biggest blackouts in Quebec history.
So the branches are falling all over the place.
The blackout, yeah, but also, I mean, a lot of people's heating could have gone out, right? That's at least you can whip out some candles to light the room up or something. Get some Monopoly out. But you want to have your heating.
Breaking the wires, we're putting them back up 2 hours after alarms go off, and it just went down again.
Hydro wasn't the only outfit on the road. The city's crews were scrambling to stay on top of the mess.
Across town, several apartments were evacuated. People had used propane-powered generators to stay warm and ended up poisoned by carbon monoxide fumes.
Oh, no.
Everyone told Montrealers to keep off the...
That's sad as well. Trying to stay warm and then get like propane poisoning on top of all this.
The streets, more shelters open for people without electricity.
Do you want a soup, ma'am?
After an emergency cabinet meeting in Quebec, the premier issued a warning.
Yeah. I think that we must tell the population that they should not hesitate to leave home if they feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, I assume by everyone got the message by then. Whether it was given to you or not, it's fairly obvious. Don't leave your home unless you have to. But a lot of people have to.
Those who tried to tough it out at home, some people's problems only got worse. This man's house caught fire after using his fireplace for 2 days straight.
What?
Hey, you know, it's going to go down in history as the ice storm of '98. It's bad, and it is not over. Hundreds of thousands of people in Montreal and across Quebec are still without electricity right now. Things aren't going to get better fast either. More freezing rain said to be on the way.
Wow.
It's freezing rain once again tonight. The second wave of a storm system that has caused chaos since Monday night. More than 100 temporary shelters are open. and at least 2 deaths are being blamed on the big freeze.
People died in this natural disaster. People actually died. And, you know, seeing the chaos and destruction, all of that added up, it's not difficult for me to see how that could happen inadvertently.
Now, with the freezing rain expected to continue right through the night, the big concern here now is that what is already a very dangerous situation could get even worse.
Bad news, Dennis. The second part of this ice storm is going to be more vicious than yesterday's for 2 simple reasons.
Oh my God, imagine turning on the Weather Channel. Imagine being here and turning that on. And this weather person's like, bad news, everyone. Another wave is coming. It's worse, by the way.
We're going to see, in some cases, twice as much ice, and winds, which weren't a factor yesterday, will be a factor tonight into tomorrow.
The ice storm has been locked in place above the city by a huge area of high pressure in the Atlantic Ocean. This system has brought all of the North American weather systems to a standstill. The normal pattern of west to east weather flow is blocked. Montreal is about to be entombed in ice.
Montreal is about to be entombed in ice. With that, I think that's a good place to stop for now. This is fascinating. This is like very interesting. I'm not going to say entertaining. I'm not going to quite say that, like, because it's like a natural disaster and people's lives are being ruined in front of my eyes. But this is very interesting. And this is a good documentary. I gotta give it to him. I feel like I'm experiencing it. I mean, I am experiencing it for the first time, to be honest. Wow, it's interesting how the location, also with how weather works, made this whole thing like 10 times worse. And yeah, I had just never ever heard of this, never learned about the ice storm of 1998 in Canada. But I'm looking forward to watching the next few parts of this. So if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this reaction, feel free to come back, look out for the next parts of reacting to this worst natural disaster in Canadian history. And if you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a comment or a like or subscribe for more videos like this, me reacting to Canada, things like that, Canadian culture, ice storms. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.